Hello to everyone on YouTube. My name is Barnaby Smith, I'm the Artistic Director of VOCES8 and you're here for my Choral Question Time. We're going to be starting in just 2 or 3 minutes. We're also going to be live on Facebook, so in a minute you're going to see me say hello to our Facebook audience. But it's very, very nice to see you. So thank you very much for tuning in and I'll be back with you shortly. Nice to see you. I'm going to put on a little bit of music to keep us entertained whilst we wait. This is Ne Riscaris Domine by William Byrd, performed by VOCES8 in our recent record release, After Silence. Hello to everyone on Facebook, very nice to see you. My name is Barnaby Smith, I'm the Artistic Director and Countertenor in VOCES8. Hello, nice to see everyone on Facebook. I'm here to present Choral Question Time, so your opportunity to ask me any questions you might like. And as part of that, I'm also going to be playing some music, which you can hear in the background. Currently I'm playing William Byrd's Ne Riscaris Domine, which is taken from our recent record release called After Silence. You can find that on all the usual places. Working with quite a bit of kit today, so I hope it's all working. If you think any of it isn't or you're struggling to get through, then perhaps you could just let me know on the chat and I'll be able to see if I can work out what's going on and try to make that a little bit better for you. I'm wondering if any of my colleagues in VOCES8 have signed in, and if they have, perhaps they could let me know that the sound and everything is working okay. Thomas Stewart Jones, hi Tommy, how are you? Very nice to see you. Thanks for logging in. Don't have any Hewitt Jones slated for today, but maybe in one of my future presentations we'll have to find some of your music to play. There's some great recordings from a few years back. Thank you, Rebecca. The music that's playing is William Byrd's Ne Riscaris Domine, which we recorded about a year or so ago as part of our After Silence project. So you can jump onto all the usual places, Spotify, Apple Music and everything, and find this recording. Ne Riscaris Domine by William Byrd from our After Silence album. Part of this show is going to be playing music, so I'm really keen to know if everybody can hear that okay. So perhaps you could type that in the comments to let me know that the sound is getting through. I should say that this is also entitled Choral Question Time, so it kind of does what it says on the tin. I'm going to be answering as many of your questions as I possibly can, so if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask, please also stick those onto the chat. Oh, Terry, very nice to see you, Terry. Hope you guys are doing well, and Bianca as well. You can hear well, excellent. Peter, nice of you to tune in. I've got some music that I think you might like a little bit later on, possibly even one of your favourite arias I'm going to play, so make sure you stay tuned in. Very nice to see everybody, lots of friends tuning in, so thanks very much for being with us. So I'm just going to tune this William Byrd down a little bit so that we can start our session. I'll keep it rolling in the background. I always feel bad about turning William Byrd off, so divine is his music. So I'll let that keep playing just whilst I give you my sort of official introduction to this session. I'm sure some of you might have tuned in to the question and answer session that I did 10 days or so ago, and that was very much nearer the beginning, of course, of the pandemic that we're currently dealing with around the world. And now it's become apparent that we're going to be isolating probably for quite a long time. I thought I might formalise a little bit this idea of choral question times. So of course I'm going to spend these presentations answering as many of your questions as possible, but I also wanted to come up with some other ideas of things I could do, things that I could bring you sort of on air as we are now that might perhaps entertain you for an hour or so at home, and I hope pass a little bit of time. So regular features, as I said, are going to be the questions and answers. But alongside that, I'm also going to be playing some unreleased VOCES8 material, so all of those of you who tune in get a little bit of an insight into some of the repertoire, a sneak preview to some of the repertoire that we have already recorded as a group but not yet released, so I hope you're going to enjoy that. Now, every cloud, of course, has a silver lining, and one of the silver linings for me has been of this isolation period has been that I've been able to spend a bit more time sitting at home, listening to music and enjoying music. You know, one of the things about the VOCES8 schedule is it's quite busy, quite intense, and often I listen to music either because I'm learning a score or because I have to conduct a piece, or because I just want to hear something that's completely different to what we do to kind of clean my ears a little bit. But I've had the great joy of being able to sit down and just put some choral music on my CD player. And so I thought it'd be really nice to bring you some of my, I suppose, recommendations, things I've been particularly enjoying recently, in the hope that you guys can enjoy them as well. I'm also going to run a competition giveaway, which is probably not strictly to the rules of a Facebook Live, but you know, it's only a little thing that I'd like to do with you just to keep it fun and interactive. I'm going to be giving some details about that a little bit later in the session, so stay tuned in. Finally, a lot of people have asked the same question actually, which is how can they keep their voices in good shape during this period of isolation when they're not going out every week to their choral rehearsal. So I thought each time I come on air I might give you just a little exercise that I do. My colleagues will tell you that I spend a lot of time in my hotel room looking after my voice. I'm a countertenor, so it possibly takes a bit more preening than some of the other instruments in VOCES8, shall we say. So I do have quite a lot of good exercises just for keeping things ticking over, keeping your flexibility especially, and we'll be looking at one of those in each session. Now the sessions are interactive, so please make sure that you ask lots of questions. I'm really pleased to say that we've had loads of questions coming in advance. And so the first part of my session today is going to be answering some of those. I'm going to be following the chat as best I can, so please do stick stuff down on the chat. Loads of familiar names coming up, lots of friends. It's really nice to see you all, so thank you very much for tuning in. I think at this point I am going to zone William Bird out, so I'm sorry about that because I'm now going to start answering some of your questions. We'll come back possibly to some of that a little bit later on. So let's begin. People who've asked things in advance, some really good questions. A bit of a funny one first. Is there a piece that you all loathe but you know it's a crowd pleaser, asks Jackie, and finishes that one with lol. I'm not sure if that's laugh out loud or lots of love, but we'll take the laugh out loud, Jackie. There are, I would certainly say, a few pieces in our repertoire. I'm not really sure I should name them because you will know when you come to a concert, but one that probably sticks out at the moment for us, I wouldn't say we dislike performing it, but it's difficult to perform, and when we do it, crowds absolutely love it, and so we feel we should do it, but it often puts us in a bit of a sticky situation on stage, and that's our new Beethoven medley. Many of you will know that this is the year 250th anniversary of Beethoven, and so there's not a lot of choral music that can be sung by an octet. So we asked our arranger, Jim Clements, if he would write us something that, you know, sort of set some of the more famous melodies into the choral scoring that we have for 8 unaccompanied voices, and he's come up with an absolute gem. Those of you who know our opera medley of years gone by, this is a very similar sort of idea to that. It's a bit of slapstick humour, but it is terribly difficult to perform. Really, really tricky. So I would say that's definitely one. It's got the Furlies in there and also sections of the Moonlight Sonata, and yeah, it doesn't give us an easy time for sure. So good question, and if you ever hear us sing it at a concert, please come up and tell us that you definitely did enjoy it, because you'll know that we've gone to a lot of hard work to put that one on for you. Michael asks, what was the process of starting VOCES8, and how would you advise others who want to do a similar thing? Well, Michael, the honest answer is that starting VOCES8 was a little bit lucky, and we did it originally because all of the founder members sang in a youth choir called the Millennium Youth Choir, part of the Royal School of Church Music, and we all got a little bit old for that. And so my brother Paul, who you have probably seen on this live from home feed over the last few days, he does the creative music making, Paul and I decided we would effectively start having sleepovers at our parents' house, and as well as having a party, we'd also do some singing. And we used to put on charity concerts or maybe do the church services at a cathedral. And I got an email completely out of the blue from an organisation in Italy who were arranging a choral competition. And they invited us to go and sing for them. And bearing in mind that we were college age, they were offering us free travel, free accommodation, free food, and a trip to Venice just to do some singing, which is what we love doing anyway. So we thought all our Christmases had come at once, and off we went. When we got there, we realised that the competition was really quite a serious thing. And so we did some practice very quickly, and we did very well in the competition. And one of the categories there was jazz and pop music, and so we did that with just 8 people, because I think we had 24 on the trip in total, forming a chamber choir. So we did it with just 8 people, and we won the audience prize, we won first prize with that group of 8. And the sort of penny dropped for me and Paul that perhaps this could be a business. And that was in 2005, so we've been going strong ever since. Indeed, 2020, later in the year, will be our 15th anniversary. In terms of the process from that point on, the thing we were very lucky with, and the thing we worked very hard for, was to get the commitment of all the founder members. Because bearing in mind, there was no money in it for us at the beginning. We probably did a good 2 or 3 years without really being paid at all. And everybody needed to commit to that. And a number of the founder singers are very successful opera singers these days, and so you can imagine that they definitely had other things that they could be going away and doing, and we were very lucky that they committed to us. In terms of what would I advise others to do similarly, I would say that commitment is the number one thing. The second thing I think is trying to figure out what it is that you can do. I think a lot of choirs try lots of different things, and some are successful, or they try to be really academic, for example, and then they might try another concert because not many people came to try and do something a bit different. But really try and find out what it is that you're good at and commit to that thing. The sort of ironic thing, I suppose, for us is that the thing we thought we were good at was being quite versatile. And it's amazing how many people told VOCES8 in our first 3, 4, 5 years of existence that we wouldn't be successful unless we chose one style of music to sing. And we always said, well, actually, we think our audiences enjoy the fact that we sing everything, and we don't just sing in chronological order or stick the jazz and pop repertoire at the end like a piece of candy. We actually try and bring some genuine scholarship to that music as well, and try and present it in a way that we think is makes its look on a concert program just as, in inverted commas, important as the classical music that we're going to sing, and have exactly the same weight of rehearsal time and thought and process behind it. So for us, that was a real one of the guns that we really had to stick to in our early years. And I would say, therefore, what would I advise? Get commitment from everybody and make sure you know what you want to do and really stick to it. I hope that's helpful. Martin asks, I enjoyed your trip to Australia last year. Thank you, Martin. So did I, very much actually. We spent some time in lovely, lovely places. He asks a few questions, all to do really with about our recording. So they are as follows. How do you balance recording and performance, schedules and repertoire? It's an interesting question. What proportion of audio recordings gets a video made as well? And how do you finance the timing of recording compared to touring? And how much of your revenue is made from recording? Well, so we can probably answer these backwards a little bit, Martin. So the first thing to say is that there isn't a lot of money for us in making recordings. We see it now very much as a marketing opportunity. Since the existence of streaming, it's quite difficult to sell a lot of CDs. Personally, I don't have a problem with that. I'm not going to sit here and complain, because the great thing about streaming services, you can reach a much wider audience. So we will make most of our money to pay our singers from doing concerts, and we are able to get our name out there a lot more because of the extensive reach of streaming services. And of course, a concert promoter books you because they want you to put bums on seats, and if lots more people know about us because they've had the opportunity to experience us on streaming, then we hope to put more bums on seats. So it kind of works that way around. So therefore we would expect CDs to be our marketing, really. What proportion of audio gets added to video? Well, we found in the last 3, 4, 5 years that YouTube and videos in general have become a medium that people really like to consume our music in. So we try and get as much music out there on video as possible. It's a bit tricky to find time in the schedule, so we'll probably do 5, 6, 7 days a year where we will create specifically video. But we're committed to getting as much of our music as possible out in that medium because we know people enjoy it. And how do we balance recording and performance schedules? Well, with a bit of difficulty. I always think it's important that when we come to record that the group's well rested. So we're always looking for periods that might come towards the end of a holiday. You know, in an ideal world, we might have had a week or two off, come back, do a couple of days of rehearsal just to sharpen up, and then head into the studio that way. Depending on the season, depends how much time we might spend actually recording. But I would say never do fewer than 7 days of recording sessions in a season, and often we'll do up to 15 days. And if you consider that the group spends 240 or 50 days a year working, that gives you an idea on that. Okay, I'm just going to take a minute to have a look at our chat. Lots of people tuning in. I've seen lots of names flying by of people I'd love to say hello to. Let's see if we've got some nice questions. Oh, this is a very good one from Jerry, who's just written this on the feed. Do you think that over the years you've improved as a group, or do you feel you've kept your product relatively on the same level, even though your members have changed? That's a really interesting question, Jerry, because you know one of the things I think about a lot is what is it for VOCES8 to improve? I think that the technical facility of the group, i.e. the ability of the singers to sing in the specific ways we sing, sort of improves each time we appoint somebody new. If you think back to my answer about how we formed as a group, that original group was a bunch of friends. So nobody passed an audition, there were no specific tests. And what that group did was it forged a way of working which we then went out and looked for people to fit into. And of course, we're so lucky that we get so many people who come to our auditions that we are specifically appointing people with really refined skill sets. And so from that perspective, I think it's fair to say that the curve of technical ability probably has increased over the last decade. That being said, a really interesting thing that I think about a lot, and I know that other group members do as well, is about the character of the group. Because when you stand on stage, it's one thing being technically excellent, but it's another thing being engaging and musical and all those sorts of extra things that go into making a live performance. And I think the group changes quite a lot in terms of its on-stage presentation. I'm sure there are many people who on this feed who've seen the group perform over the span of 10 years, and you will know that the character of the group changes. That doesn't necessarily make it better or worse. It probably keeps it quite interesting for those people who have known the group for a long time. So I wouldn't say that's necessarily an improvement, but it's something that I notice changes a lot. And when we consider our concert presentations, we're always trying to offer something that's entertaining for 90 minutes. And a big part of that is presenting 8 characters on stage as well as the singing. And so it's something we think about quite a lot, is how we keep that interesting for people. So I'd love to know on this feed if anybody's got any thoughts from an audience perspective about that. But a very insightful question. The final thing I'd say on that, of course, is that there's always an opportunity to improve on pretty much everything that you're doing all the time, and it's something that I think I'm always grateful for my colleagues for, because the group is never happy with what it's doing. It's always happy, but it always thinks it can achieve something a little bit extra, to the point that we did 130 gigs last season and we got to the 130th concert, and I walked in to the sound check expecting that everybody would just be happy just to test the acoustic of the hall, you know, put our stage tape down, make sure we've warmed up, and then, you know, take a load off, and so we could enjoy the last concert. So I went in with that mentality, and suddenly all of the group members were like, no, we really want to fix this. Actually, we didn't think that was good. You know, can we really work on this? We've been wanting to think about that for a while. And so there's always this energy in the group to try and improve. And so I hope that will never, ever go away. And it was certainly a pleasant surprise on that day for me. Okay, let's take a look at our feed here. Rebecca says, what advice would you give to a new choir director? Well, Rebecca, that's a good question. I mean, I think it probably depends if you want specific advice, what sort of situation you're in and what your experience level is. I know you say new, but have you ever sung much before? One of those types of things. I always think that the best advice you can ever give to anybody who's fortunate enough to stand out in front of a choir is for that person to try and be themselves. And I think you can see an experienced choral director apart from a new choral director based very much on that scale. So it is daunting being out front, especially when you're starting out, but the reason that you're standing out front in the first place is because other people, I assume, have either offered you that opportunity or supported your you taking that opportunity. So there are people out there who believe in you, and you must take that energy and believe in yourself and just go out there and try and present who you really are. One of the things I try and do when I am conducting is I try to clear my mind and let myself go into the music, so that I'm just presenting to my choir or to my orchestra Barney, the in the moment musician, and then I hope that they are able to take the direction and gesture that I feel in the moment to create a good performance. It's very easy because we spend a lot of time in rehearsal being technical. It's very, very easy to take that mentality onto the stage, and I think if you can try and free yourself from that once you get onto the podium, that's also a really good thing to be able to do. Loads of questions coming in. I can see that Will Bishop is very active on the feed, and Will sent me a question in advance. I'm just going to have a dig around and see if I can find that. Yeah, very nice to see you, Will. Will's a participant on our Milton Abbey International Festival and Summer School, which takes place every summer down in Dorset. So check that out. If you want to check that out, you can do so on our group's website on VOCES8.com. Will asks, when you're all learning a piece of music, do you tend to work on a small chunk of the piece at a time, or do you tend to just work through the piece in order? And also, do you spend much time working as a group on the piece, or do you do sectional, so soprano, alto, tenor and bass separately at certain stages? It's a very insightful question, Will. I think it totally and utterly depends. What I would say about the way the group works is it's always morphing, and we're always trying different techniques and different things. I think it's unusual that we would just pick a piece up and sing it from the beginning to the end lots of times. Obviously, if it's a short piece, that might be something that we do, but generally speaking, we work on a piece in sections. If we came to a piece, say, for a half an hour rehearsal, and it was maybe 3 minutes long, we might sing the piece through from beginning to end to give ourselves an overview. Then we might break it into 3-minute long sections, work on each section, and then maybe sing it through a couple of times at the end to put all that work into context again. We don't always start at the beginning either, and I think this is a trap that many people fall into, and often if you go to a performance you can hear that the beginning is often better than the end because everybody has spent lots of time rehearsing the beginning and then they run out of time and never quite get to the end. So sometimes we will start at the end, so we'll start with the final verse of a piece or the coda or whatever it is and get that right, and then work through the piece backwards so that we try and keep an even spread. We do also do some work in sections. Often we'll split upper voices and lower voices, so sopranos and altos, and tenors and basses. And one of the things we find really useful is allowing members of the group to stand out, because it's very easy to think and hear one thing standing in the group, but you get a very different perspective when you go and put yourself in the audience's position, or even in a director's, a conductor's position. And so we'll often spend a lot of time asking one or two members to stand out and listen and comment back. I think that's very, very important. So, and we rotate that around the membership. So I hope that's given you some useful ideas, because I know that you do a lot of singing yourself. Let's take one more question. I'll take one more off the feed, and then I want to move on to my next segment. Anne Randall. Oh, no way. Hello from Wax. I was a chorist at Westminster Abbey with Richard Randall, Anne Randall's son. Very nice to see you, Anne. Thanks very much for chiming in today and being with us. I hope you and the family are all really, really well. Bianca Clode is here as well. Bianca's a very good friend of the group and actually helps us, one of our German coaches. Someone asked me in my last question and answer, do we take language coaching? We definitely do, and Bianca helps us with our German. So what's Bianca's question? Bianca says, I believe that the best performances are a result of everybody believing that you never ever can reach 100%. Yes, so commenting on my point earlier on about the group always wanting to improve. Simon says, sorry Barnaby, I called you Barney. That's no problem, Simon, because I go by Barney on my, and just generally to everybody. It tends to be when it's written down, it sometimes comes as Barnaby, so no worries at all. Sally Kelly. Sally's a very good friend of mine and was one of my conducting scholars, one of my assistants last summer. It's very nice to see you, Sally. And she's asked a question. She says, what can choral directors do to help prepare their singers for a professional career in singing with professional choruses? Is a very good question. And someone else actually asked, which might come to later on, how can you use a singing degree to prepare yourself for professional choral music? So let's deal with Sally's question first. I think one of the difficult things, Sally, about preparing people for a career in choral singing is that depending where you go in the world, different things are required. So I can certainly tell you the types of things I like to see in a singer when they come and either audition for me or work for the group or whatever it is. And I think people who are willing to be flexible is the most important thing in choral music, certainly in what we do as a group. Having the ability to walk into a room and be asked to do something differently and be able to do it, not, we're not all perfect, so we can't often do it straight away, but be able to do it really very quickly and be malleable in that way, I think is hugely important. So I would say, if you're a choral director, training your singers to be able to do a piece differently each week is a really good way to do things. One thing I love to do when I conduct is be able to have a choir in front of me that's able to react in the moment. So in choral music, we can be really just convinced that it has to be perfect to the nth degree, and we become especially bogged down in small technical details. And so each week we want to go back and refine it further and further and further and further and further. And of course that has massive benefits, but one of the things it takes away is the ability to make music in the moment. So I like to do a piece differently on a daily basis if I've got the choir for a day, and often in VOCES8 we will sing a piece one way, go in the next day and sing it completely differently and wait for it to settle. So from a choral director's perspective, get them to be quick at doing something a bit different. And a part of that, something that comes up a lot in choral music, is how quickly people pick up music in terms of learning it. And I think if you want to have a career in professional choral singing, sight reading is one thing, but I think learning music quickly is another thing, and being able to learn that music at home. So either turn up knowing it or be able to pick it up quickly is really important. Sight reading, well, again, if you can do it first time, great, and that will ultimately help you. But being quick in that way, I think, is really important. So that flexibility and speed with the music is what I would be focusing on if I was you. And now let's move on to something a little bit new, something that's a bit away from this idea of just me yapping at you with answers. Please continue to write your questions in the feed, and I will do my best to pick those up. But as I said earlier, I want to also share with you some music that I have been enjoying myself. And I have picked a theme for this week, which might not surprise many people who know their church calendar or indeed know me, because it's my favourite composer. And we are, of course, now in Passiontide, and Passiontide for me has always meant singing a lot of the music of JS Bach. So I've chosen to focus this week on Bach as a kind of composer, and specifically on his St. Matthew Passion, because there are some great new recordings that have come out. Now, in just a minute, I'm going to play you a new VOCES8 recording, and that's also a piece of Bach from a cantata that we've recorded that's coming out in a couple of weeks' time on our new After Silence release. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview of that. But before that, I want to introduce the first of two recordings that I've picked this week to encourage you to go home and listen to yourselves. As I said, they're both settings of the St. Matthew Passion. And the first one's a new live album, by King's College, Cambridge. I actually live in Cambridge, and King's College is just around the corner. And I was lucky enough to be at this concert. It also features the Academy of Ancient Music, and for anybody who follows our YouTube channel, you'll know that we do a lot of concerts with the Academy of Ancient Music. They're regular collaborators with us, and you can find us singing with them a lot over on YouTube. One of the things that makes this recording particularly special for me is not just that I was there in the hall when it was made, but that also it's conducted by the recently late Sir Stephen Cleobury, who of course had such a huge impact on British choral music over the last few decades. And this was actually the very last time that I saw Stephen in person, because he sadly passed away very recently. One of the things I found moving about it, I always find it moving watching a choir of young people, and what I include, unfortunately, I include the choral scholars in young as well, because they're young compared to me. I always enjoy watching a choir of young people sing with such heart, passion, and enthusiasm. And I think that it was also heightened for me in this because it was clear that Stephen, the conductor Stephen Cleobury, so Stephen Cleobury was giving every last ounce of energy that he possibly could muster into engaging with all the musicians. And you can really hear that in the quality of the playing. It feels like you're sitting right there in the room. And the recording actually is available. I don't have surround sound, but it's available in surround sound. And I was recently working on a VOCES8, mastering a VOCES8 album at Abbey Road Studios. And the disc they'd been making and mastering before I had been in was the 5.1 surround sound of this particular album. So if you have a surround sound system, get online and look this up. It's only come out in the last week or so. It was absolutely incredible to sit there between 5 amazing speakers and just, it was like you were standing in the middle of the orchestra and the music was coming from all directions. I want to whet your appetite by playing you a little bit of the opening chorus. As I said, the orchestral playing is second to none, and the thing I particularly enjoy about this is how gripping the choral singing is, and you can really feel the energy live in the room. Now I'm sort of really pushing myself, shall we say, with the technology I'm using today. I've got quite a lot of buttons to press, so I hope this works. If you're struggling at all to hear the sound, then please just drop a note on the Facebook feed and I'll watch that whilst I play this. So this is the opening chorus of the Matthew Passion from a new release by King's College, Cambridge, with the Academy of Ancient Music playing, conducted by Sir Stephen Cleobury. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, a lot of people are saying that the recording is not, the quality is not particularly good. So we'll hopefully try and improve that as we go on. But it's highly recommended from me, this recording. If you can get it in 5.1 surround sound, that would be even better. Now, I said that we were going to preview a VOCES8 recording, and this is going to be another piece of Bach which comes from a new CD that we are releasing releasing on the 17th of April. Those of you who've been following us this season will know that we are releasing an album across the whole year called After Silence, and the third category comes from under the title of I need to remember what's the title. I can't remember. Lost the note. I'm reading so many people saying that the audio quality is bad. Apparently it's a little bit better on YouTube, so maybe one of my colleagues. After Silence Devotions is the one that's just come out. Oh, I can't remember. Anyway, I should know the title of my own album, shouldn't I? Oh, I've remembered it. It's After Silence Redemption. It features a lot of fantastic music and closes with a Bach cantata, cantata number 150. And this is a very interesting cantata. We think it's probably one of the first cantatas that Bach ever wrote. We only actually know it from secondary sources, and it probably survives from when he was working in Arnstadt between 1703 and 1707. And it's written for very few instruments. If you know a lot of Bach's cantatas, you'll know that they come in various different shapes and sizes, but this one is written for really quite small forces. And it's also through composed. It's a very early cantata, it's through composed. And the movement I'm going to play is the second movement. One of the interesting things about it is that he takes an idea for a very short space of time, maybe 10, 20 bars, and then moves to something completely different. Whilst I play this, I'm going to see if I can get the sound to be any better. So perhaps you could just keep commenting on the feed and let me know if it's any good. So this is going to be from Cantata 150, which is called Nach der Herr verlanget mich. Okay, there we go. So I'm getting mixed reviews about the sound here. Some people say it's okay if you're not on your phone, but a lot of people are saying that it's very good on YouTube. So perhaps you can get over there and check it out. But that was just the opening of Bach's Cantata 150, and that's going to come out on our new record release called After Silence. The third chapter of that comes out on the 17th of April, and I'll also be previewing a little bit more of it for in my next session next week. So let's go back to our questions. Lots of people writing in on the feed. Okay. So Mike Newman asks, how do you synchronize your singing so well, even when there's no regular rhythm, like resuming after a pause? We always seem to know when to come in together, and is someone giving any subtle gestures? Well, Mike, the answer is quite simple actually, that we try and breathe together as a group. And one of the things that we definitely benefit from with having the same 8 singers all the time is use the word synchronization. And it's this synchronicity that we benefit from because we get to know each other so well, and we get to know each other's musical gestures of the way that we're shaping a phrase and all that sort of stuff. But the real secret is that we try and breathe together. So that's how we achieve that. Rod asks, how many pieces do you learn in a typical year, and how do you do it given the extensive touring schedule? We probably sing in any year between 200 and 250 pieces, Rod, and we will learn music whilst we're on the road a lot of the time. So we will have maybe 2 hours of rehearsal before each of our concerts. And part of that is spent, of course, getting to know the space and thinking about that evening's program, but a lot of the preparation is done in advance, so we might spend half an hour on the concert for that evening and the other hour and a half learning some new music. So we would do it like that. We also spend a lot of time learning on our own, so when people come to rehearsal they are already knowing the notes, which means that we can start at a pretty quite a long way down the track, and it doesn't take us so long to get the music learned. An interesting question from Ryan, a technical question from Ryan. How do you prioritize notes within a chord? He asks specifically, which ones do you try to make the loudest or the most resonant when you consider the root or the tonic of the chord, the 5th, the 3rd, and the 7th? Well, we will always try to make the tonic the loudest, then 2nd, the 5th, then the 3rd, and then the 7th. If we're operating in octave unisons, we will decide whether we're going to have the lowest octave louder and the high octave being a sort of ghost note of that, or whether we're going to invert the chord and try that the other way around. So we're always looking to balance the octave unisons as well. And Anupa asks, how do you cope with jet lag and the lack of sleep during your tours, and does it affect your voice? Well, yes, it affects our voices very much. We have to work hard at this, and everybody has a slightly different way of dealing with it actually. For my own part, I use a thing called melatonin, which is, I believe, the hormone that your body releases when the sun goes down to let you know that it's time to go to sleep. So it's very good for trying to manually adjust your circadian rhythm by taking a dose of melatonin when you need to go to sleep. It also helps you to sleep through a little bit longer, so just resetting. Another thing that's very good is to always try and operate as much as possible in the time zone that you're going to for as long as possible before. Sounds like an obvious thing to say, but things like eating your meals. So when we get on the plane in London, if we're going to America, it might only be breakfast time, or it might still be the night time in America because we're going backwards in time. So we might try and sleep for the first 2 or 3 hours, then eat breakfast and then lunch when we get off, so that we feel like it's not time to go to sleep when we get to America, but that we're still expecting dinner. So that's another very good one as well. Going on, let's go back to our feed. So let's have a look. See if we can find someone who wants to ask a question on the feed. Someone says, booked to see you in October. We'd love to see you in October, Sally. Hopefully we'll be back singing then. Okay, here we go. Here's some questions. Let's see if we can pick a good one. Okay, this is a one that's quite specific for the job that I do. They say, Barney, what are the challenges for an alto and a countertenor singing together? I'm mostly thinking of the earlier repertoire when it's quite low for the alto line. That's a question from Jackie. Well, there's many difficulties of pairing a male and a female voice, but there's also many advantages, Jackie. So with Katie and I, we need to understand each other's instrument, and we also need to be able to create sounds that are like each other's voices. So Katie has an absolutely beautiful voice, and one of the things I love about it is it's got a very rich but also quite clean tone, and so that's a tone that I find quite easy to not necessarily imitate, because I don't think I could ever sound as nice as Katie, but I can find a sound that's quite easy to move my falsetto towards. And so when we're blending, we will often choose who is going to be the lead voice, and one voice will sit slightly behind the other. And one of the really nice things for me about having a female colleague is that Katie's got a great deal of versatility across the whole range, which is something we always aim for as countertenors, but it's not always straightforward. We also think about who's going to sing in what tessitura, and this maybe is specific to your question about the earlier repertoire, because sometimes you're right, it can go quite low, because a lot of the alto parts that we're singing in early music are of course originally high tenor parts, and so I'll often use my modal baritone voice for that, and we'll try and get Katie high enough that she's comfortable. But Katie's also got a fantastic chest register, which she uses, and you can hear that in some of the music when it suddenly turns this really rich alto sound. So listen out for that as well. She's got some really good low notes. Then Derek asks, how do you keep from burning out your voices singing and practicing so much? I think a lot of it's stamina, Derek. So as much as if you were going to run a marathon, you will have to train for it in order to be able to have the stamina to sing, to run for a long period of time. And we have a similar thing with the voice. It's all operating with different muscles. And so making sure that we've trained those muscles. And, you know, we will notice when we come back from this period of isolation, for example, or when we come back from a holiday, that our stamina isn't quite as good. And we have to be careful that we build up slowly to be able to sing 6 hours a day, say at the end of that period. By and large, we try not to use the voice singing for more than 4 hours a day. That's also quite a good rule of thumb, I think, something we try to work towards. And then, of course, the old adage of make sure you warm up the voice. But I think almost more importantly, make sure you warm it down afterwards. So we put a lot of pressure on our larynx and all those muscles, a lot of stretch on them when we sing. And so making sure we take that pressure out and zeroing the voice. And a little bit later in this session, I'm going to give you an exercise that you can do with that. Now, Cheryl asks, how do we work on balancing in the ensemble? Well, it differs piece to piece, Cheryl. I'm going to answer your question from sort of two perspectives here. The first perspective is how we actually go about achieving it in a rehearsal, and it comes back to a point I made a little bit earlier, that we will often try and have somebody standing out to listen. So an external pair of ears is very important. We'll either do that with having somebody in to practice, to actually rehearse the group, maybe a specialist who can come and give us some pointers, because that means all 8 of us are singing, or we'll get 1 or 2 people to stand out and listen and give comments. In terms of how we balance specific pieces, it can depend on many, many things. When we're working chordally, we'll always be trying to analyse what a specific chord is and balance it appropriately. Flicking back to my question that I answered earlier about how we choose which tones in the chord to sing louder and softer. We'll always be analysing the chord in that way. And if you watched Blake's fantastic session on intonation, then he was talking a little bit about that and some of the really interesting facets of how we can work with intonation. When we're singing music that's not necessarily so homophonic, we will be thinking about what the important voice parts are. So if we're singing some polyphony is based all around motifs that are then imitated. So if you're the first person with the motif, everybody else in the group knows that needs to come out, so you're going to sing a little bit louder, but everyone else will consequently also sing a little bit softer. So there's always this kind of micro adjusting going on. But it is something that we have to talk about and we discuss and debate quite a lot in order to agree a balance between everybody. And now Brett says, do you have any recordings of the group singing in a venue with very low reverb? And do we practice in a setting with a high level of reverb? Well, I think one of the interesting things about our job, Brett, is that we of course sing in a variety of different halls and spaces. And so we try to practice in the same way. But of course, that being said, because we sing in many different spaces, we're always practicing in settings that have a different reverb. Our home in London, the VOCES8 Centre, has a wonderful acoustic. Too nice, really. So when we practice in it, we're often decide that we're really happy with a piece of music, and then we get it into a drier hall and we realise, oops, we really should have done some better practice on this, because now that the acoustic's gone, it's showing up a multitude of sins that we wish we'd practiced. So it is good to sing in a dry space, and we will often put pieces that are difficult deliberately into a dry space to practice them, to make sure that we really pick up and on everything and dot all the I's and cross all of the T's. And we do actually have recordings that are recorded in dry spaces. So our recording Aces High is made in a completely dry studio, so you can go and check that out. But often when we make a recording, we'll record it in, I wouldn't say a dry space, but we'll record it in a venue that's not particularly, doesn't have a particularly long reverb tail. And then we can decide in post-production whether or not we want to add any sort of electronic reverb onto that. One of the sessions I'm going to be doing as part of this Live from Home series, a little bit later in the series, is going to be about how we make our recordings. So you might find it particularly interesting to log into that. I'm actually going to set up a little poll on this video to see if it works. So I've published that poll now. I'm really fascinated to see what people will say to this. I've asked you which is your favourite Bach passion. I've only listed the St John and the St Matthew, so maybe we'll get a few people who are unhappy about that. But oh, someone's already clicked the St Matthew passion. Okay, now someone in for the John. So get in there and let's see what results we can come up with for that. I promised you a competition. And this competition, it does rely on people being able to hear the sound. So I hope it's going to work, the sound's going to work well enough. Because what I want to do is play you 20 seconds of a piece of music, and I'd like you to identify it for me. If you can identify it, I'd love you to send me an email with the answer. My email address is my name, barnaby@voces8.com. I'm going to accept emails up to an hour after this session finishes. And for anybody who's got the right answer, I'm going to put your name in a hat, and then I'm going to draw out a name, and I'm going to give away a new copy of our After Silence album, which only is going to arrive on my doorstep on, I think, in about 3 or 4 days' time. So you'll be one of the first people to release to receive a pre-release copy of After Silence. So I'm going to try and play you this little excerpt of music. Your job is to identify the composer and the title of the work. And if you can do that, then please send me an email, barnaby@voces8.com. I hope you can hear the audio. Fingers crossed. Let's see what happens. Here it comes. There we go. So that was just half a minute of audio. Can you recognize what that piece is? If you can, send me an email with the name of the composer and the name of the piece to barnaby@voces8.com. You've got just over an hour to send that email, barnaby@voces8.com. If you've got the right answer, I'll put your name in a hat, and I'm going to pull out a winner to receive a copy, a pre-release copy of our compendium album, After Silence. Great. Now I was going to play you a second Matthew Passion. I'm going to just try very briefly because I think some people can hear okay. This is a recording of the Matthew Passion by probably my favourite interpreters of Bach. That's a big comment to make, isn't it? The artists are called the Bach Collegium Japan, and their wonderful conductor Masaaki Suzuki. Their recordings are always so beautifully engineered from a sound perspective. You can hear so much of the clarity in the music whilst also feeling as though it's just luscious, rich and warm. They're really, really wonderful. They have actually recorded the entire cantata series, so their catalogue is really, really extensive. And they recorded a St Matthew Passion many years ago, and they're at the beginning of their recording careers. This is a new release that they've made just last year. And the movement that I'd like to play you is the aria Mache dich, which when I heard it was a very moving moment for me for a number of reasons. First of all, I love the aria. Of course, it comes a pivotal moment in the Passion with a very beautiful message. Also, I was one of my formative moments as a student was having the opportunity to study with Masaaki Suzuki, who is conducting this performance, and the piece we actually did was the St. Matthew Passion. And so there's many things that inform my interpretation today, not just of this piece, but in terms of how I go about making music generally, that have come from him and that I can hear so present in this recording. And the third thing is that my singing teacher is actually, well, my former singing teacher, Christian Imler, is actually the baritone in this performance. And I maybe am a little bit biased therefore, but I was just absolutely in awe with the way that his conviction carried into the microphones. It's so difficult when you're recording to come up with a take that's perfect enough, but that also carries true heart and conviction. And Christian has just managed this in an astounding way. And that's before you even consider the level of his artistry. I hope you can hear it well enough, because the music, you can tell, just lives in his bones, and the text that he sings comes from his soul. And this is something we talk so much about as choral singers, isn't it? But just listen to the way that he uses his consonants. It's really, truly moving. For those people who maybe don't speak German, the translation of this is, "Make yourself pure, my heart. I want to bury Jesus myself, for from now on he shall have in me forever and ever his sweet rest. World, get out and let Jesus in." Sorry to German speakers, that's not a literal translation, but it gives us English speakers a good understanding of what the aria is about. So the artist here is, the singer is Christian Imler. The orchestra is the Bach Collegium Japan, and it's conducted by Masaaki Suzuki. So here it comes. Markedicht, the opening of Markedicht, sung by Christian Imler. The orchestra is the Bach Collegium Japan, conducted by Masaaki Suzuki. I am willing to put my hat on. That is the best recording of that aria ever, in my opinion. Please go and check it out. It's available now on all the streaming services and everywhere that you might find your music. So I'm just going to take a couple more questions before we wrap this up today. Somebody has asked, what do we think is more important when we're singing an aria like this? Is that the text or the music? Well, I think the answer to that is that we hope they go hand in hand, and certainly one of the most incredible things about singing Bach is that they always do. We will spend a lot of time in our VOCES8 rehearsals considering what the text means and how the composer has specifically chosen to set that in the music, and trying to get into the composer's mind in that way, I think is a really important part of the interpretative process. So often people go in there and they bash the notes, and the text can get left behind a little bit. So Lisa Wong has just put the Bach Collegium in Japan also has a very recent live performance of the St. John Passion on Facebook. They do. And I actually sent Christian Imler, the baritone in that recording, a message saying how wonderful I thought the recording was. And he wrote back to me and said that they were touring in Europe at the very beginning of this pandemic, and the concerts became cancelled. And so in the time that they had between still being in Europe as a group and being able to get their flights home, they had a day, and so they all got together and they recorded the St. John Passion. So you can actually also look out for that, which will come out in the next year or so. Talking of the St. John Passion, I can see that our poll is now over 100 people, and we have the Matthew Passion winning at the moment, 56% to 44% of the vote. So please get on there and vote, because this session is going to be finishing quite soon. Last couple of questions then. Bianca Cloder says that I'm forgiven for my translation of the Markerdich. So thank you very much, Bianca. Bianca's our German coach. Carlos asks, what's the VOCES8 audition process? Well, Carlos, it goes on quite a long time because we have to go through quite a lot of rounds and quite a lot of tests to find a singer that fits, of course, musically, but also fits into our team. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll hear our auditionees sing solo. So in order to apply for the role, you have to send in your resume and 2 sound clips. And from that, we'll select people who we're interested in to come and sing solo to us. Normally 2 songs, which I set, that might be contrasting, 1 classical piece perhaps and 1 jazz piece. And then the singers who we hear and we really like their voices and we really like the musical spirit that they present and we enjoy meeting, we invite to come back and sing some excerpts of our repertoire. So they'll come and sing with the group for 20 minutes or half an hour with 5 or 6 excerpts that we've asked them to prepare. And once someone comes and stands and sings in the group, it becomes quite evident quite quickly who we believe could really take on this job. And so we'll ask anybody who we think falls into that category to come back for a 3rd round. And at that 3rd round, we do a job interview. We spend some social time with each of the candidates. And we also have them sing with our singing teacher and do a little bit of training with us on possibly some of the leads that this person would be required to sing. And then we prepare each singer to give a performance with the group, and that performance is to a collected group of people that we've invited. It's actually one of the most nerve-wracking days of the year for us, because we'll walk out, say, with 4 or 5 singers and have to do the same concert to 30 people who we know really well, and that's actually really nerve-wracking for us. So and after that we're able to select a singer. So I would like to just finish today by saying a very big thank you to everyone for tuning in. I'm going to keep trying to refine these presentations. So if you've got any ideas, then please do send me an email. Please, if you'd like to enter that competition, if you were able to identify that piece, then you can send me an email at barnaby@voces8.com. The poll, I'm going to pause now. We have a clear winner, which is the St. Matthew Passion with 57% of the vote. And I've covered those 2 wonderful new St. Matthew Passion recordings today, one by the Bach Collegium Japan and one by King's College, Cambridge. So get on your streaming services and check those out. We've got some wonderful things coming up in this next week. I'm just going to scroll down to my list, make sure I don't forget anything. Let's have a look. So we have VOCES8 performance videos coming out. We have videos that you can sing along with. We released one last Friday, a Bobby McFerrin song. The Academy of Ancient Music are going to be broadcasting our 2019 performance of Messiah on Easter Day on their channel, so go and check that out. We've also got more sessions from our foundation team. We come to you every day at 2 p.m. UK time here on socials. Our hashtag is live from home. We're also interviewing this week composer extraordinaire Jake Runestad, and lots of sessions coming from our foundation, so please get on there and check that out. I'm next going to be with you on Tuesday the 14th of April, and I'm going to be previewing that album which I played you a little bit of today, our next After Silence release. So I wish you all a very good Holy Week, whatever that means for you, and a very happy Easter. Please stay safe, and thank you very much for tuning in.